How difficult a decision was that to come to?
It was hard. I love this city. I'm passionate about what I do, and I've given it 120%, so to speak. And just think about not being here, not seeing the people every day. Part of it is a major relief, but part of it is just bittersweet. It was hard to think about not being able to give back. It was a tough decision.
It's kind of hard to keep it together as a city and yet grow as fast as we're growing.
It's hard to keep the identity of a city that's as spread out as we are, because we got the equivalent of another good sized city at Alliance. We're going to have the equivalent of another small city, but pretty good size at Walsh. And certainly down at the Tarleton campus, the same thing. And so to draw those very diverse communities in is critical. But you got to work on your internal part of the city. And we've done that because cities tend, as they age, tend to die from within, and people lose their identity. And we don't want that to happen to Fort Worth.
What progress do you think we've made there?
We've made really good progress. I think we've identified 4 or 5 major areas. I think we've raised our profile. Certainly, we've worked on that between Visit Fort Worth and traveling with the airport board. I do think we've raised our profile a lot. I've traveled with the folks at Hillwood to the Consumer Electronics Show and all, and we always promote Fort Worth. And just the fact that we are now number 13 and will be 11th or 12th, we have begun to get a lot more national attention. And all of those will raise our profile. And our Fort Worth Now group is working really hard to help raise that profile. Are we perfect? No. And we're always going to struggle a little bit because Dallas is so much better known just from the football team, from the movie, the TV show, all of those. But that's okay. We don't want to be Dallas. We're a totally different city. We just want a success on our own right.
And in terms of attracting companies here or new businesses to open here, education's a key part of that. I know you've done a lot there, but there's still a long way to go.
There is a long way to go. And I know we are not the only city struggling with that. Every major city in the nation is struggling with education. I think America got a little complacent as a whole about public education. I think these huge, school districts are hard, particularly when you've got, like Fort Worth, we got 15 different school districts to deal with here. And I do think, and I've talked to the Board of Education folks and the superintendents all around, I'm not sure that schools really realized what product they needed to be turning out the last 10 years or more. And now they're getting there. TCC is working hard to help us with workforce readiness, Tarleton, TCU, UNT Health Science Center. So we're slowly making progress. And the new T3 initiative that's Cradle to Career is going to help with that a lot. I think what I feel really good about on the education piece, Bob, is that we've raised the profile, we've peeled back the Band-Aid on that, and really made the business community stand up and say, maybe we ought to be talking about more about how do we succeed with public education. When I first tackled education, people said, you'll lose your head. The mayor's got no business being in education. It's not your bailiwick, but it is. It's the backbone of everything we do in this city.
Fort Worth was starting to become a much younger city
Mm-hmm.
than it had been. And that was one of your big initiatives. What can you talk about the impact of that?
Yeah, we were, and I assume it's still true. I haven't checked it this year, but the youngest big city in the nation. I mean, our average age is much younger, and that bodes really well if you engage people in the civic process and in the business community. It's really good. That's a big draw for businesses to know they're going to have a stable, young workforce. It attracts innovation. It attracts entrepreneurs. This is a very much a changing world in the technology field, whether it's working with drones or in the medical industry. And I think being young, is a real plus for us.
But then attracting those young people to come develop businesses here and such like that. Something I know that Tech Fort Worth sometimes struggles with is getting, basically taking the spotlight away from Austin, which seems to have all those attributes. How Fort Worth can do that
That was part of the
Pretty
reason
tough.
we started with Fort Worth now. We have to identify where our strengths are. We can't chase that shiny bird that Austin is after. We got to be us, and we've got a lot of work in the medical field, in manufacturing, in aviation, in defense. There are a lot of key areas, and there's a lot of work being done in mobility innovation in this area. And I just think we got to promote that, and we've got a much better quality of life. I'm reluctant to say it's cheap to live here because no one will argue that it's not cheap. But relatively, real estate is still a much better value, and the cost of living is much better here than it is in the Austin area. So I think we got to tout our strengths and continue to do that. And I'm really pleased with Fort Worth, the work Fort Worth Now is doing on that effort. And I think in the next few months, you're going to see some really good things coming out of that group.
So you talked a little bit about you're obviously going to sit back a little while, but do you still have plans to have a high public and political profile?
I don't have plans right now, but Bob, I've been involved in service of some type or another all my life. If it was from PTA to church to junior league work, all kinds of community things, all church home. I don't think that I can go back and do nothing. I'll enjoy my kids and my family, and I'll enjoy a little downtime to ride my bike and do things. But I'll get back in service somewhere. If it's going to be public or it's going to be private, I don't have a clue yet. I don't have plans. I wasn't looking for this job when it came along. It chased me, and I have an idea that'll be the case on the next one.
In terms of accomplishments, you had several you mentioned yesterday, and there are probably several left off. But is there any one that you can point to that maybe you didn't expect to accomplish, but were able to during your time?
I knew early on that we had to absolutely try to increase voter turnout, and particularly in the younger age group, because I have younger adult children. I'm very pleased with Fort Worth, with Steer Fort Worth, what they've done and where they've gone. And I'm incredibly pleased. The Blue Zones project, I knew we had to work on the health of this community to make it more attractive to everybody, not just residents, but for businesses too. And both of those have just had phenomenal results. I couldn't be more pleased with all of the initiatives, but those two. It was really dicey that we could get that Blue Zones project finished, not finished, but really approved in 5.5 years, and we did, and that was a lot of work. And for Steer Fort Worth to still be going strong 10 years later and out on their own, and they're 300 people now, and we've appointed a bunch of them to city committees. That's pretty impressive for them.
One accomplishment that I thought of that's very tangible is the Dickies Arena.
Yeah.
Which is probably facing some challenges here in year 2, year 3. And there's going to be some more changes to the convention center and such. Do you think that's going to be set back by the pandemic by a year or so, or what do you think is happening there?
Dickies will be okay. I think the financial model that it is on, the private partnership, passes, and several others has helped us get that pretty firm. The fact that hotel occupancy taxes are coming back up quicker than we thought they might, Dickies is going to be okay. I mean, clearly they're a little behind with having been closed for a while, but they've got the new lacrosse team. I think some of the rest of it, I think the convention center is definitely going to be set back for a while because Visit Fort Worth will be working on that in the city, and it'll be heavily hot tax funded. And I think we're just going to have to sit back on it until conventions begin to come back stronger than they are right now. But it's definitely been pushed out at least 2 to 4 years or more.
You feel like downtown is pretty strong at the moment, despite the pandemic and XTO leaving?
Yeah, I was very pleased that the impact of XTO was not near as detrimental as we thought. We would love to have kept them, but those buildings got absorbed back into the market and repurposed very well. And Most of their workforce was that wanted to stayed. I think downtown recovered from that much quicker than I thought it might. Right now, I think downtown's like most areas, they're struggling with because the restaurants and the hotels are struggling, but they'll come back. I mean, when we get the vaccine back and more people and we can begin to bring more groups in, hopefully we can get Sundance back open once this levels out some. And summer comes, spring comes, it'll attract a lot more people. I think downtown's getting there. We got some businesses moving in. The fact that we've taken the Pier 1 building off the market will help facilitate. It kind of absorbed some real estate that was a bit odd for because it wasn't right downtown, but it wasn't suburban.
Mhm.
That'll force people back into downtown that are looking for Class A office space. I don't know that there's any one single thing. I think I'm not one to look back and regret things at all. I think you have to, but I think there's been a lot of learning moments. I think probably the one that we did that worries me was the very first, the Jacqueline Craig issue
Mhm.
was not handled well at all. I'm not proud of the way we handled it, but we learned a lot and we got race and culture and we started down a journey that's continuing today. And we did. Then the Tatiana Jefferson shooting was so tragic, but the handling of that from the city side and even from the police side was so much better than the first one that thank goodness, didn't involve a shooting. And I would say those have been two of our biggest learning moments.
If you could single out one single thing that you think you've done that benefits Fort Worth in the long term, what would that be?
I think it's hard to single out one, but I think you've heard me say, I don't believe you govern well behind a desk. And I think being in the community, being where people walk up to me all the time and talk to me. And part of what they say is, we've never had a mayor that we could just walk right up to and hug or talk. I hope that has made people feel like their local government, their municipal government was a little more open and accessible to them. And I hope they'll remember that. I hope that'll be continued. And I've never tried to politicize this, but as a citizen or a resident, I still feel like I have the right to endorse who I want to. And I don't think that the mayor has to necessarily be out on endorsements, but I've never tried to use this office as political office. I mean, somebody said, well, you had a good connection with Trump. Well, I would hope the mayor of a major city would have a good connection with the president. We also had good connections in the Obama White House. He just didn't have the mayors in as often as Trump did. But I never tried to politicize it, but I'm not afraid at all to endorse people if I think they're strong candidates and on either side. I mean, I've had friends on both, and yes, it's no secret because I was a Republican office holder before this that I lean more to the conservative side.
Right.
I've always believed that the real backbone for successful people, and you all know that, if you're going to serve in any level of service, is passion. You have to be passionate about what you do. You can't come at it lukewarm. And I would just probably tell that 18-year-old, develop your passion and act on it quicker. There's been a lot of role models in my life. And I think for people right now, the big term is your mentor or your tutor. There isn't any one person. Most of us don't have one single mentor or one single role model. There's a lot of them. My mother was probably the strongest influence on me. She was a genius. Didn't work until after we were all out of the house, and she went to work, ran my dad's business essentially. But she and my parents really probably the biggest. They just always said, do the right thing, stand up, don't mince words, and be polite and be nice, but make decisions and let people know where you stand. And they were not afraid for their daughters or their son to serve and to do things. And that had a big impact. I always try to look at things and say, what's right here? I think there's some undercurrent here. I think we've done a good job as you said, collaborating, working with all our different communities, being out in that community. I don't think it's perfect. I think Race and Cultural Task Force brought a lot of issues to the table. We've done so much training and so much involvement. We're working hard with redistricting. I think there's always that danger, Paul, but I really, we're truly, when I talk to the other mayors in the big cities, we're in much better shape because I don't like the word Fort Worth now. I mean, Fort Worth Way, I've never used that. It's always been more, this is a partnership and collaborative. And everybody's always had a very open door policy for people to come in. So I think if we can continue that, we continue to all talk and to work on it and not bury it, not put our heads in the sand, but talk about it and make actual action items, we'll be all right. Hope that whoever it is very open to hearing people. And then they're going to have to find their niche and do their thing. I mean, I did my thing and it was totally different from the other mayors, but we've never had anybody else got out in spandex in the community or their bicycle or walking or rolling, walking, any of that. And I don't expect whoever does this to do exactly like I did either. I really think there has been. Visit Fort Worth has really come into their own in the last 10 years with Bob Jameson and Mitch and several of them. They are incredibly well respected all over the state and all over the nation. Very, very innovative. Look at their annual meetings and what they've done with them and how they pump up. And if they had the new convention center, I think we'd see huge plays there, but they've just done great things. The chamber is pretty much undergoing a new renaissance. Probably, I loved Bill, but probably a change in leadership and refocus over there is good for them. I think partnering with Fort Worth Now, because we've got the right people from the business community to help with that Fort Worth Now. We've got leaders who haven't been engaged. I mean, John Goff, Elaine Agather, several of them, Paul Dorman, have not really been at the table talking about that, and they are now. And I think those two together will make great strides.
Would you like to have been able to pull out and say, look what we've got?
Oh, we've got a lot of really good things. I think it's really more a matter of raising our profile. I don't know that there's any one tool, except we talked at length about education.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the biggest tool that all the cities need, not just us, but everybody. But I think just getting a little better known on the economic development side is a big deal. And I think we will start it down that road. I do think that the people we have at the table right now to help us with Fort Worth Now are going to help change a lot of that.
Is embracing the heritage really ultimately the way to?
Oh, absolutely. When I've traveled with the airport, I've been on numerous overseas trips and we've increased the international business. Mike Rawlings and I, that was one of our big initiatives 10 years ago, was to get more international flights. Mike used to say, I wore my Molly pin, the Longhorn, and occasionally I would have my cowboy hat and boots. And Mike would say, I hate that because people really connect with your Cowtown image. And I think if we don't play on that, we're dead serious wrong. It isn't an either or, it's an and also, because it is a real pull for people. The stockyards look so good. But we don't promote the cultural side of Fort Worth enough. We've got world-class museums here and world-class music.
Any words for Fort Worth's business community? What?
Just tell them, stay engaged and be open. And if they've got interest in changes in development process or planning or any of those things, keep us posted. The business community just needs to stay at the table and stay working with us, and they've got to work with their elected officials. And they've been good about it. I just love this city, and I love serving, and it's a tremendous honor to be able to do that.